get here, camera one, just hold for tic-tac-toe, kind of get that nice and spicy shot right there, just come all over.
So Master VLR is on track. Your front row, your pole sitter, Pat Beckley. Rumor has it, the 125 Limited guys kicked it out of the class. So he's running Master VLR. I've known Pat for a number of years, and I think he's run every class possible. He started out in Briggs, then he ran the ROK package, which is 125cc tag package. Then he jumped up to the shifters, ran 125 Limited, had a dominant performance in 2022, and now he is running Master VLR. And it looks like our Masters, we have 17 drivers in Master VLR. This class is brought to you by Radical Northwest. Your pole sitter, Pat Beckley. Off pole, Dan Jones. Row 2, Michael Ting. Carlos Calderon. Row 3, Giorgio and Stefan Gaudreau. Row 4, Kieran James, Dan Rivera. Row 5, Scott Fermanic and John Madrigal. So the drivers are coming down the main straight. We're keeping an eye on head flagman Phil Hand down there in the turn 1. He gets waved off. They will go around again for a formation lap. So our drivers are going to go one more formation lap. So that will allow us to continue. Row 6, Fred Clark and David Palick. Row 7, Sherry Camilla and David Kao. Row 8, Alexander He and Kyle Armstrong. And rounding out our 17 Master VLR drivers is Jeff Bullock. So our front row, Pat Beckley, GFC Karting. Off pole, Dan Jones, Ron White Racing on the CRG product. So we're bringing the drivers down the main straight. Now we have a green flag with the drivers going into turn 1. Looks like that's going to be Pat Beckley on the inside. And did all of our drivers made it through nice and clean. Pat Beckley is going to be your leader, followed by Dan Jones. And that looks like it's going to be Michael Ting running in 3rd. And then Carlos Calderon in 4th. And Giorgio running in 5th. That's their top 5 here in Master VLR. These are the same exact engine packages as the senior VLR class. The only difference here is these drivers are a little bit older, hence the Masters name. Pat Beckley is your race leader. Dan Jones goes to the inside going into turn 1. Pat Beckley crosses him up. Dan Jones drives off the track going wide. So he's going to lose 5 spots, maybe 6. Gorgeous George also went a little bit wide, exiting Monaco. So we have Beckley, Calderon, Ting. And that looks like we might have Stefan Gaudreau running in 4th there. So Pat Beckley is pulling out a lead here. Pat Beckley has a 7/10 second lead over second place Carlos Calderon. Further back in the field, Dan Jones makes a pass. That puts him in the 5th spot. Pat Beckley's on speed. Their drivers up coming from Dano S's. And further back in the field, that looks like it's Michael Ting battling for that third spot with Stefan Gaudreau. Keep an eye on cart number 714 of Dan Jones. He started on the front row and just went wide into turn one. So last lap, Pat Beckley had a 0.7 of a second lead over Carlos Calderon. However, Carlos Calderon is currently running a purple lap, meaning he's the fastest kart on the track right now. So we're going to look at that time split between Calderon and Beckley. We'll try to pick up the racing action there for second. So we're picking up the racing action on screen here for second between 4 drivers. So keep an eye on Dan Jones, kart 714. He just went purple. Little bit of contact between Ting. That looked like it was contact between Ting and Gaudreau. And that puts Jones, now he is running in second. So these guys are dicing it out. So you got Beckley, Jones, Ting, Calderon, Gaudreau. So just in a matter of a couple of corners, we had Dan Jones going from 5th to 2nd. So we're going to try to pick up the racing action further back in the field. Looks like this pack is being led by Stefan Gaudreau and Giorgio's Giorgio. And I think that might be Uncle Dan Rivera back there. Oh, and someone's into the wall. I'm trying to see. I don't think that was Calderon, but it might have been Calderon going into the wall. Give us a moment while we try to grab a cart number off of that vehicle.
I can't zoom anymore.
But meanwhile, we're picking up the action here for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. So it appears Gaudreau is still on track, so I'm thinking that was Carlos Calderon that went off into the wall. I can only assume something possibly broke for Carlos, because he generally does not make mistakes. And here we have Pat Beckley out the lead, followed by Dan Jones, Michael Ting, Gorgeous George, Dan Rivera, Stephen Gaudreau, Kieran James, David Palak, Scott Bermanic, and John Madrigal. Next time around, we'll have 11 laps to go out of 18. Once again, this is our Master VLR here at ROK Sonoma, race number 4. This class is brought to you by Radical Northwest. So just to confirm, cart number 705 or 706, that was in fact Carlos Calderon. But we're looking at the racing action here. It looks like David Palick was going for a pass. So right now we're picking up the racing action. I believe this is the battle for fourth. Actually, that's going to be David Palick. So David Palick, Scott Fermanic, John Madrigal. So that's going to be the battle for 7th, 8th, and 9th right there. So David Palick, for the past couple of years, he's been running the Masters ROK class. Different engine package. That one is 125cc water-cooled Vortex engine. But for this race, he bumped up to the Master VLR because the competition was much tighter. I talked to David Palick a little bit earlier today, and he said this is the most fun he's had racing in a couple of years because the class was so tight. And here he is running in 7th spot, battling it out with Kieran James and Scott Fermanic. Drivers as they cross the start finish line. So once again, we have David Palick there leading that pack as Kieran James is trying to get around Palick. Off screen, we'll keep scanning around to see if we can see some other racing action. And right now we're going to see if we can pick up our race leader. So currently Pat Beckley is going down the straightaway. So we're picking up our race leader here, Pat Beckley. And on that last lap, Gorgeous George goes purple. Gorgeous George running in 3rd goes purple. So we're going to keep the eye on the lap time between Pat Beckley and Dan Jones, but Gorgeous George went purple. The differential last lap was 0.6 of a second between Beckley and Jones. That gap has been cut in half to 0.3. So, and Dan Jones goes purple. Dan Jones has chased down our race leader. We're gonna have a battle for first here. We have 7 laps to go. After a misstep by Dan Jones, he's done a great job carving his way back to the field to go battle for the lead. So Pat Beckley is on that GFC chassis, black and white bodywork, and then behind him you have Dan Jones on the CRG, black and orange bodywork. Looks like Dan Jones going for the pass going into turn 1, This is where he went wide last time. Pat Beckley crosses him over, stays on the inside. They're going to drag race going into Monaco. Pat Beckley has the inside line. Pat holds it. Jones doesn't have enough of a run coming off of Monaco to counter back going into Kramer. But these two are going to dice it out. They're going through the S's. Beckley leads them into Laguna. They're heading down the hill to tic-tac-toe. Let's keep an eye on Dan Jones's strategy here. Beckley has a good run coming out of tic-tac-toe. Down the straightaway, the advantage is going to go to Dan Jones as he's in the draft. Does he make an attempt again? No attempt is made going into turn 1. Let's see if he tries something going to Monaco. No attempt there. Meanwhile, in third, we have Gorgeous George setting purple lap after purple lap. Gorgeous George is going to get in the mix here for the lead. These drivers on the next lap around will have 4 laps to go. But keep an eye on the screen in the background here. You're going to see Gorgeous George right there. He is closing the gap on second place. So this battle between Beckley and Jones has slowed them down. And Gorgeous George is reeling them in. Let's see if he has enough laps to make it a 3-kart battle for the lead. So for all of you guys out there that says shifter racing makes you a bad driver, in the lead is a shifter guy. He looks pretty darn smooth if you ask me. Pat Beckley is out in the lead, but he is chased down by Dan Jones. Keep an eye on kart 725 of Giorgio. Dan Jones to the inside. Over the curb, Dan Jones has the lead. Let's see if Beckley has a run coming up the hill. No, and we have a lot of wind going down the back straight. We have a lot of wind. Let's see what Beckley does here. They're going down the straightaway. If you can hear me in the pits, grab your tents. Grab your tents if you can hear me in the pits. We have a lot of wind coming through right now. But back to the racing action. We have Beckley now in second. Dan Jones is in the lead. We're going to have 2 laps to go when they come back around. And what happened? Somewhere further back, we lost Gorgeous George. After all that action between Dan Jones and Pat Beckley, I missed what happened to Gorgeous George. He is not in the top 5. 2 laps to go. Master VLR brought to you by Radical Northwest. Round 4, ROK Sonoma. It's hard to say if Dan Jones has a lead where he's pulling away, but he's going into Laguna. Beckley is right there. Let's see how Beckley goes through tic-tac-toe. Beckley has a good run coming through tic-tac-toe. Can he carry the momentum up the hill? No, they're going to look pretty stable, or the same gap there. We're going to have a white flag. Beckley should have the draft going down the straightaway, but is it going to be enough? Nothing in turn 1. Jones has the lead. He's going to take the class into the Monaco section. Let's see if Beckley tries anything going into Kramer. Not close enough going into Kramer. Jones is going to take the drivers through the S's. In the Laguna, right-hander going downhill. Dan Jones is still your race leader. The tricky tic-tac-toe section. Beckley has a good run going in. Let's see if that's going to capitalize going up the hill. No, it doesn't look like there's enough momentum. One more corner, Pat. Can you make it happen? This race goes to Dan Jones. So Dan Jones comes home with the race win in Master VLR. Pat Beckley had a great little race there. Next up is going to be our Pro and Master ROK Shifter. Pro and Master ROK Shifter. That class is brought to you by Altwell Alternative Wellness Products.
Follow that guy around before you go going number one, then point to the big lanes. That shot right there was bold, and I'm going to cut you right now. Jason, you are in 3, 2, 1.
Here comes our race leader, Dan Jones. Front row to 6th or 7th spot. Came through the field. Further back in the field, it looks like that's Stefan Gaudreau congratulating his competitors. Beckley congratulates race winner Dan Jones. I think I'm going to start a series where we ad-lib. Because I think Dan Jones says, yeah, I just threw it away right there.
Blowing out my ears every time I have you. Thank you.
So right here, the camera is on our scales. Second place, Pat Beckley. There's your race winner, Dan Jones. That looks like that was Kieran James in the background there, next to Stefan Gaudreau. We have a couple of carts coming off the track.
Yeah, I saw that. Camera 3, if you can hand up a little bit. Tilt up. A little more headroom. Yeah, right there with the flag.
There's a great shot of the Sonoma Valley in the background. As you can see, sometimes on the TV, it's hard to see how physical kart racing is. But a couple of our drivers are pumped right now. And then they were having a great battle on the track.